Just like the Canadian wilderness can be unforgiving, her fiction implies political reality is just...
Okay, so today we're diving into the creative force that is Margaret Atwood. I mean, 85 years old, and still just one of those vital literary voices out there. She hasn't just seen history, she's practically written the rule book on cautionary tales for our times. We're taking a deep dive into her latest work, Book of Lives, a memoir of sorts.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is this isn't your standard chronological life story, not at all. It's huge, like 624 pages, but it feels more like a mosaic. You know, a mix of memories, essays, reflections, philosophical bits. Atwood's just, she's incredible. 17 novels, 17 poetry collections, tons of nonfiction, short stories. She really is like a literary Renaissance woman.
Absolutely. And for so many people, she is the voice of the modern cautionary tale.
Yeah.
I mean, The Handmaid's Tale alone. Plus, she's got Booker Prizes for The Blind Assassin and the sequel, The Testament. Her influence is just massive globally.
And our sources really emphasize that the mission of this memoir is quite specific. It's trying to unpack this central idea of duality. Yeah, the person who lives the life versus the entity that writes the books. It's this exploration of the connection, that sort of symbiotic dance between just living and then creating art.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that duality, because it seems like that's where the book really sets itself apart right away. Atwood kicks things off with this wonderfully playful but also quite deep tone, introducing what she calls a sinister alter ego.
Right. She almost externalizes that writing drive. She describes this other self, this writing self, telling her to maybe ignore the usual memoir rules, you know, encouraging her to spill some beans, maybe call out some enemies, all to, as she puts it, shatter her witchy image. It's a really engaging way to start.
It is, and it feels like it acknowledges that central problem with autobiography, doesn't it? The writer looking back is just fundamentally different from the younger person who actually went through it all. So the book sets up these two distinct personas, intertwined, yes, but separate. The one living, the one writing.
And she uses a brilliant little anecdote to make this point about fan Q&A sessions. She says when fans ask, you know, the classic, where do your ideas come from question, she sees the illusion right there. The person signing the books, the living self, she's there, physically present. But the writing self, the one actually responsible for the novels, that self is like absent, off somewhere else in the imagination.
It's almost like a psychological defense mechanism for someone so prolific. You have to separate the consumer of life from the producer of art. And she takes it further, comparing it to Stevenson's Jekyll and Hyde. They share a mind, share memories, maybe even, she jokes, share a closet.
Yeah.
But they are definitely separate beings with different aims.
Yeah, and that separation lets her think really deeply about memory itself and time. She has this powerful line, I move through time, and when I write, time moves through me. Which immediately makes you think, okay, if the writing self controls the narrative, the flow of time in the book, what does that mean for the reality of the person who actually lived it? How much control do they have over their past in the telling?
And she's incredibly upfront about how unreliable memory is, even her own. It's the raw material for any memoir, but she questions it. She even compares this sort of fading, shifting nature of time and memory to James Joyce's Liffey River and Finnegan's Wake.
That's a key comparison. The Liffey just flows constantly, washing through history, washing away the precise details. Atwood's basically saying, look, memories feel real, they're vital, but they aren't objective recordings, they're flawed. Even diaries, she suggests, can kind of bend the truth depending on when or why they were written.
But wait, if the author herself says memory is unreliable, doesn't that kind of undercut the memoir as, you know, historical fact? Is this separation just a narrative trick? Or is she genuinely saying the writer isn't fully responsible for what the living self did?
I think it's maybe a bit of both. It's definitely a way to claim artistic freedom. She's putting the subjectivity right out there, saying, engage with this as craft, not just as a factual report. She wants you to accept it's curated art. But to understand the material that the writing self had to work with, well, then we do need to look at the actual life she lived.
Perfect segue. Let's look at that life, the source material for the art. Margaret Atwood, born November 18, 1939, Ottawa General Hospital. Seems conventional enough on the surface, Father Carl, an entomologist, Mother Margaret, a dietitian, but her childhood was anything but conventional or stationary.
Not at all. Her father's entomology work meant they lived this really unusual nomadic life. Winters in Ottawa, sure, but summers were spent deep in Canada's wilderness. Lumber towns, the Canadian Shield Country. And this wasn't like cottages with Wi-Fi, this was real immersion.
Yeah, it sounds like more than just camping trips. It was formative. We're talking about living properly off-grid. Bush cabins, months at a time, no electricity, no running water, no phones. That kind of deep resourcefulness and, frankly, isolation, that must leave a mark.
Absolutely. And this nomadic life fostered a deep love for science, directly from her father's work. She quotes him saying something like, "Every time you look at a piece of a rock, you're looking at a time machine." So she grew up seeing the world through that lens: systems, classifications, deep time, harsh realities.
That focus on systems, on how things work or fail. You can totally see how that feeds into her later political fiction, right? It wasn't just abstract reading about power structures. She was out there studying natural systems, hunting insects, gathering snakes, learning survival.
Exactly. If you connect those dots, her resilience, her exposure to nature's indifference, it directly fuels what some sources call her Prussian warnings about authoritarianism.
Okay, Prussian warnings. That sounds a bit academic. What does that mean in plain terms for her work?
It means they're stark, preemptive, almost militaristic in their severity. The idea that tyranny isn't something that just creeps up. It's always a possibility, maybe dormant, but inherent in human systems. Just like the Canadian wilderness can be unforgiving, her fiction implies political reality is just as harsh. Those survivalist themes in her books, they didn't just come from nowhere, they came from living where you had to be resourceful.
And the big one, obviously, is The Handmaid's Tale, which she actually started writing in Berlin, right, in 1984. Which is such an interesting place and time, Cold War Berlin, for those Canadian survival skills to morph into global paranoia.
It is, and she gives these wonderful little examples of how tiny life details sparked whole novels, like a childhood memory of playing in a clay pit, totally random. Years later, it becomes a key setting in The Edible Woman back in '69, or just a note scribbled on hotel stationery that apparently gave her the entire idea for Alias Grace in 1996.
It really pulls back the curtain on creativity, doesn't it? Shows how the mind is always gathering, filing things away. She even talks about how much the actual structure of her stories can change during writing.
Oh yeah, she mentions how The Handmaid's Tale originally started with that really intense group hanging scene right at the beginning. But then she realized it worked better later in the book. It shows her technical skill, moving these big pieces around until the pacing and the political impact are just right.
And even before the big novels, her career really launched with poetry, The Circle Game in 1966. It won the Governor General's Award, didn't it? Shows that sharp, precise language was her thing right from the start.
Moving on, the memoir also covers more recent and profound personal loss. It's dedicated to her longtime partner, Graham Gibson, also a writer. They were together from 1973 until he passed away in 2019.
Yeah, and you can really feel the weight of that grief in her recent short stories, Old Babes in the Woods, from just last year. It's a reminder, I suppose, that even a writer as skilled as Atwood can't fully capture a person or a relationship on the page.
True. But what also stands out is how she uses her, characteristic wit and sharpness, even when dealing with tough subjects. The memoir is full of these really blunt little lessons and bits of life advice, often wrapped in that dark humor.
She definitely doesn't hold back. I loved that line about public humiliations. Basically, they pass unless you vomit or die, which is just such a brutally funny, specific way to gain perspective.
It is. It's cynical, but somehow comforting. But she uses that same bluntness for bigger political points, too, saying that governments claiming to help can actually cause harm, whether it's, historical regimes or, importantly, your own.
Right, and this is maybe where things get a bit controversial, as the sources hint. Her suggestion that no government, whatever its stripes, is immune to sliding into tyranny. That's an uncomfortable thought for a lot of people.
Well, she's not really pushing a specific party line there. It reads more like she's acting as that critical observer again, using the memoir as a kind of wake-up call, just encouraging critical thinking about power itself. The message seems universal. Be wary of systems that promise perfection but demand total compliance. And personally, her advice is simple. Hold your megaphone tight. Use your voice.
And, because it's Atwood, she mixes the political with the peculiar. The memoir also gets into her quirkier interests, strange events, ghosts, mistakes, even her fascination with things like astrology and palmistry.
Yeah, it just reinforces that her mind doesn't work in neat boxes. The scientist, the political prophet, the slightly witchy poet, they're all in there together operating at once. And the book itself reflects that it has photos, illustrations. It feels less like a straightforward account and more like, one of her novels. Life and art totally fused.
It really is quite a statement about living a long, observant, creative life. What it means to witness, to create, to keep going. The book feels like a conversation, doesn't it? between that young, resourceful girl in the Canadian bush and the older, wiser woman looking back with all that wit and earned wisdom.
So for you, the listener, thinking about this huge book, what's the takeaway? We started this dive talking about Atwood's own warning. Memories are shaky, diaries can mislead.
Right, so the memoir isn't just history, it's a creative act, deliberately constructed. It's a self-portrait where she's holding the brush, choosing the colors, deciding what makes the final cut.
That writing self, the one crafting the narrative, makes choices. What goes in, what gets emphasized, what's left out. So if this book of lives truly is a fusion of life and art, the question we want to leave you with is this.
Given Atwood's own assertion that memory is unreliable, and given the writer's power over the story of the person who lived, how much of this memoir should we read as faithful, documented history? And how much is compelling, brilliantly crafted, maybe even necessary fiction? And ultimately, does that distinction even matter when the insight we gain is so profound?
Grab Book of Lives, a memoir of sorts, by Margaret Atwood, now on sale, $23.95. Don't miss this chance and build good habits and achieve remarkable results. Buy now, today.
Like and subscribe for more Bookhaven podcasts.